Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're just going to wait a couple of moments. Thanks for your patience. We're just waiting for some other people to join us, but we're really delighted to have you here. It'd be great to get a sense of who's on the Zoom with us. So do share your location if you don't mind in the chat function. And yeah, it'd be great to get a sense of where everyone is based. Hi again. Hi, everyone. My name is Louisa Uliet. We're about to make a start. Thanks for joining us. We're just waiting for the last couple of people to join the room. Hi, everyone. Okay. Gosh, my head's big. Great. We'll make a start now. Good evening. My name is Louisa Uliet, and I'm curator of talks and events at the Photographers Gallery. Thanks for joining us. It's evening here in London, and we're really delighted to be here with Susanne Breidenbach and Andreas Pauly. So we're here to talk through the exhibition that opened at the end of June. It's a retrospective on the work of Evelyn Hofer, and the work in the exhibition looks at her work her practice from the mid-1950s, the 1990s. So today, Andreas and Susanne will talk us through her approaches to working with people, her approaches to color, what it was like to put the exhibition together, and what it was like to work with her, and what it means for them to bring Evelyn's work to British audiences. Oh, just gonna let someone into the room. Before we begin, I'll just give some background information on our two guest speakers today and go through the format. And Susanne Breidenbach runs Gallery M, which is based in Germany. They show a broad range of artists working across various disciplines, including photography, which Susanne has been very focused on developing since she joined the gallery. She has also edited books on Evelyn Hofer, and we're very grateful to have her here with us this evening and for organizing the exhibition with the Photographers Gallery. Andreas Pauly is a photographer and works broadly with themes around architecture and contemporary art. He first met Evelyn in 1982, and they proceeded to work together for many years across Europe and in the United States. Since Hofer's death in 2009, he has managed her estate. Thank you both for being with us this evening. So in terms of format, this evening, we'll begin with a conversation between the two of them with some questions from me. There'll be opportunity for questions at the end, or if you have anything that is really exciting to you in that moment, please feel free to send through your comments in the chat function. We'll be here for roughly an hour, and please note we are recording this. So if you don't wish to be recorded, you can put your question in the chat function, or if you don't mind, please raise your hand using the Zoom function and we'll ask you to unmute yourself. Anyway, why don't we begin, and I'll just bring up Andreas and replace myself in the spotlight, and Susanne.
Good evening.
Hello, everybody.
Okay, let me pull up the PowerPoint presentation we're just looking at. So I thought we could start at the very beginning. So this is the first room when you go into the Evelyn Hofer exhibition at the Photographers Gallery in London. It'd be great to get a sense from both of you what your connections are to Evelyn, how you first met, or how you first encountered her work. Andreas, do you want to go first?
Okay. So as you said before, I met Evelyn in 1982. She was coming to Europe looking for an assistant. And yeah, and we did our first job in, that was the King Ludwig castles in Bavaria. And we very quickly came along very well. So from that time on, we were working together. So whenever Evelyn came to Europe, I helped her. And then I also traveled to the States when she had a show or major works to be done. So that's how it started. And then around the year 2000, when Evelyn was working less, I was kind of managing her her estate or her, the whole thing, because then she wasn't able to do that anymore. And that was it more or less. So
Susanne, what about you?
Well, I met Evelyn first with one single picture in the collection, the private collection of Stefan Erfurt, one of the founders of CO Berlin. And this happened to be in September 2000. I asked if I could see more photos. So meeting between Andreas and me was arranged. I saw the 40 pictures you brought with you. I asked you, we've met in October, and I asked a month later if I could see more. And so we would meet something like mid of January in 2001 at Evelyn's studio. That was the first time that I would meet Evelyn Hofer as well. And as Andreas indicated, she wasn't working anymore because she had, due to an operation, a short-time remembrance problem. So I don't know if she ever would really remember me, but she was perfect to work with because she was so super precise. She was very gentle, very clear, and she had a great remembrance about her work. There she was totally precise. She never lost that interest, that knowledge about her own body of work, for example. And so my personal relation with Evelyn possibly was just from my side, because I don't, what do you think? I think she never really remembered me.
No, I think the thing with her was she was forgetting names, but she didn't forget people. So I'm sure she knew who you were, even if she may have mixed up your name. And then once you were talking about her work, everything was there. I noticed
she was totally, absolutely.
When later on, when I did prints, so when I came out of the darkroom and showed her a print, she could exactly spot what was not right with the print, because the images stayed with her all the time.
Yeah, everything about hers was
faded, but her image memory was very good and precise till the end.
Yeah, also her remembrance about her earlier work was clearly there. So what I want to say is that I was in the very lucky situation to start a cooperation with Evelyn Hofer, where she still could judge about her work. And this was all possible due to Andreas Pauly, who not only was her assistant, but really organized, as you said, the thing. You organized her whole life. I mean, that really was a great thing to do. You made it possible that she could live until when? Until 2007 in New York on her own?
2005. And
2005.
The last year she moved to Mexico when she needed whole-time care.
With her gorgeous sister, Alina, even a year older or two, no? Yeah.
So as mentioned, this is the first room of the exhibition, and we thought we'd start by showing an image of her at work. I think you said that this is taken in Barcelona, but I think this image shows a little bit about how she works with people and how her work is so different from what you would expect from, say, a street photographer. Is there something that you can add to how she works with the people she captured?
Yeah, so I think this was a small village in Spain where she photographed, and the children were curious what she was doing, because all the people thought, oh, poor Miss Hofer, she can't afford a modern camera. She still has to work with an old-fashioned camera. But that was the camera she liked to work with. And it was heavy equipment. You need to have a tripod. It's an old 4x5 field camera. And you have to use the dark gloss to see something. And it's a very slow way of photographing. So no comparison to 35mm cameras where you can snap something. Here it takes time. So, and maybe that's why these kids were so curious, because they hadn't seen something like that before.
Well, there are only some other aspects bound to such kind of technique. If you work with this, you really have a limited number of transparencies. So if you use them, you really should be certain that the picture you take is worth taking. Evelyn and we checked that. Someone in the at the very beginning, Evelyn really worked precisely for the project she was doing. She wouldn't produce hundreds of photos for nothing. Whatever she did was really kind of not really to the point, but close to the point. And another thing which I find totally important is her pictures, her composition in her pictures has a very strong aspect in the design of that picture, the composition, the light, the colors, how people stand there. And the great thing about it is that to understand how she could do this great compositions, do understand, and most people joining in tonight will know that, but you must understand that the picture she is looking at in this situation is upside down. So that is an abstraction of what you see. And because it's an abstraction, you focus much more on where the colors are, where the light comes from, how things are placed in the frame of the camera, of your lens. And this, I think, is one of the very important aspects which allows her not only to be to have the solid moment, which makes such a difference to a lot of other photography.
In terms of what you were saying,
using that camera with her first book, Florence, but she was using the same camera till the end of her life. So the only thing what changes were maybe she added some new lenses, but once she found her camera, she was sticking to it. So she didn't try out different things. Same with film. Once she decided she liked the film, she was using the same film until it was discontinued, maybe. But so she said, that's the thing I know, I like to work with, and that's it.
Yeah, that really, I think we have to go on to show how she works. I mean, we maybe should show some more pictures about from her work, Luisa, if you like to go on. Yeah. So here we just saw the very short. Maybe you can go back to the installation one. Right, there you see that the whole idea of the photographic picture is also a very classical one. You wouldn't see it here, but if you go and see the exhibition or have seen the exhibition, you see that the quality of her prints is quite specific. She decided to go for dye transfer, but she never really blew up. She never really made some spectacular, I don't know what, and she could have done by that time, of course, as well. I think this is important, but in the sense of this classical understanding, so taking a decision for a camera, taking a decision for transparency, film material, for example, it's also that she stayed on as long as she could. But I would also say that there is hardly any difference between 59 pictures and 89 when she came back to Italy again and photographed there. There's this red line of quality. And it's not that something new popped up or something new had been invented. She really kept her style, her quality in a very intense way, very clear. But what changed is, of course, people in those pictures, colors or design. So that is more what she's telling about modern times.
Let's look at some of her images more closely.
Mm-hmm.
That first room, by the way, just to say, so after you enter, this room really looks at her time in London. So this first image here was taken in Notting Hill Gate.
Mm.
And then this is more of a domestic scene. And then these ones here, people in work environments. This is something that you can say about how she works with the everydayness of people and what she wanted to show and her.
Well, I think first of all, as you can see, people are relaxed in front of her camera. So for her, a portrait was a collaboration. So she was asking, there are always people before she photographed them. And then, of course, the whole process took quite some time. So, but the main thing was for her that people are happy what she's doing. I mean, that people are comfortable in what she's doing. She didn't want to spy on people. She wanted them to trust her. And I think this is very obvious in these images. And then, of course, she was first seeing how the composition is, like this group of men. And then most of it, I think she did it by intuition. And then her big quality was that she could connect very well to the people. So, and that's, I think you can feel that in these images, that there's always a connection with her. People are never indifferent, like, so, and yeah, I think that's part of the reason why she's a very good portrait photographer. Mm.
Yes, certainly. You can see that here because of different circumstances around class, or here also with, I'm sorry, I'm going to go back. Here with age and race as well. These things aren't, as you said, it's not really a concern or focused on the people.
Yeah.
It's more the charming situation that those kids are really with themselves, pressing the face. The little girl who presses her face at the glass of the window. This is very cute and very nice, and you wouldn't pity the kids for whatsoever. I mean, you just see this is childhood.
So this is also part of what is shown in the London series. This is less what we were talking about in terms of working with people. This is a commission too, so maybe this would be a good opportunity to also talk about how she worked with magazines, publications.
Yeah, so this was a commission for the London Sunday Times magazine. And mostly she was working very closely with the art directors. One of them, Bruce Bernard, he got a close friend afterwards. And I think the art directors knew what kind of essays they would ask Evelyn to do. Because I think most of these images or these stories are more like photo essays. And the theme was here, the British prisons. And so for her, it was important that it's going back and forth. So she would do a detail like the door, and then this anonymous portrait next to it. So I think that was also, she was also thinking in doing a series. So she was trying to get some variation in it by doing kind of still lifes like the door, or she did maybe a still life of a pair of shoes in front of the door. And then when showing the people, she tried to respect that, that they are in prison, and she didn't want to face, to have the people expose their face in the camera. And I think she was very sensitive in that series.
That makes sense. In terms of the context, seems very respectful. Was that the same in other environments? So looking back at how she worked with the people here, was she very playful, or was she very focused on her work? What was her interaction with them like?
Well, I think the main thing was that for her that she got the character or the essence of somebody. That was a word she always used, the essence, not just of a person, but of a city. That was her main goal, I think. And like the reporters, it was also important for her to use long exposures, because she believed that when people are concentrated and they know they have to stand still for maybe a quarter of a second or something, they are more concentrated and they are more themselves. So, yeah.
We can move forward actually, so we can get a better sense of some of what you were saying. So this is the room in the exhibition that looks at work from Dublin and Wales. So maybe there's something here, I think, that demonstrates what you were saying about that stillness, that essence that she was trying to capture.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this photo is really one of those photos, those pictures which so many people make smile, and they really love it. It's an iconic picture of hers. It's typical Irish, possibly. The colorful shirts and the socks had been knitted by nuns and those people. And believe it or not, but Andreas and I, we met two of them during the exhibition in 2017. And was it 2017 in Dublin?
2012, I think, in Dublin.
2012 even. Okay,
they had
good.
the idea to try to invite as many people as possible, which she photographed at the time, end of the 60s.
Oh, that's so
Right.
nice.
Yeah, and you can do that in Ireland, possibly. Ireland is the book which possibly is the one which is most likely like a personal portrait in a way. And we met two of those guys who had a lot of fun and they're really humorous. And I just met them and told them that me and my girlfriends, we think of those guys as the most sexiest men alive, and they couldn't. They had a lot of fun about it because, I mean, they are all like really figures. Look at those faces, how they look like. They have been waiters in restaurants and hotels, and had their day off, and the Sunday, I think it was, they played soccer in Phoenix Park. Yeah. And the photo is also very specific, and this, Andreas, you can explain much better than me, but Dirk Weinertz, another photographer I work with, said that nobody would be able to do such a photo with a normal camera. Maybe if this is possible today or with more modern cameras, you have this very three-dimensional appearance of those four men. They really stand out. They are really kind of very, very realistic in a way. And this happens because you have the unsharp background. And Dirk Weinertz told me that this kind of shift wouldn't be possible by that time with the small camera. Is that true?
Yeah, I think he was quite right. So I think it's two things. So one, it's the camera, so the large format camera, and where you get this nice unsharpness in the back. I mean, of course, you can get the same thing with the 35mm camera, but then again, it's a dye transfer process, which makes this three-dimensional quality. And then another thing is the lenses she used. She used some sometimes very old lenses she bought on the flea market. And because she thought the quality was so nice, they had a special three-dimensional quality. And there was one lens she bought in London, and the last project she did, which will be the last image of the show, are the still lifes. And she did all these things with this old size lens from 1900, so which she had transformed especially for her camera, and she believed that this makes this special quality also.
Yeah. Again, really three types. If I look to those pictures, I always think this is Hollywood. Really look like film stars in a way. Really characters, no? Wouldn't you think so?
Yeah.
And then also again the thing with people in front, and then how the background develops. So the lights, a bit of light, that it gets a little bit more. So it's the darkest trees are in front, and then it gets lighter and lighter, which is kind of strange thing. And also the unsharpness in the background. It's again something which which makes this picture to me very strong.
And I could see, looking at the contact sheets, that she came there, and I could see there was a group of grave diggers. I think 5 or 7 men were standing there. And she took a few images with all these men standing there. But then, very soon, she picked these 3 guys, and she wanted to have a portrait of these 3 guys. And I think this also, she did it by intuition, because they are different, but still they're very,
Andreas, I would say those guys are flirting with at least the camera, but I think with her, they're really flirting.
He could be an actor. I mean, he's looking.
All of them could be actors.
Yeah.
Look at them.
Yeah.
They really, they are characters.
Can you go back, because there was one nice story about this image, the Dublin sky, because all these were printed in Switzerland by Conrad and Huber, and in gravure, which is
the book.
The book.
Yeah.
A very nice technique, which is not done anymore. And so she was looking at the proofs, and this guy was totally blue. And so she was furious, and she talked to the printer and said, "What did you do with the sky?" and then he said, "Oh, poor Miss Hofer didn't have luck with a nice blue sky. So we helped adding more blue to the sky." And she said, "No, I was working so hard to get that gray sky. What did you do? I want a gray sky with just a little bit of blue." And so that shows a little bit how the approach at that time was towards photography. So all the amateurs were looking for a nice blue sky, and Evelyn was looking for a nice gray sky. And that was the main difference. And all these muted colors, which had to be like this for catching this atmosphere she feel Dublin had at that time.
I'm going to move to the next image.
Yeah.
But I think it also shows what you were saying also about depth and like the sculptural element. That's not exactly what you said, but
Yeah.
Hmm.
This is a different series. So now we're on a different floor of the gallery for those who have been or haven't been but would like to come. This is the Just Married series. So this again was a commission, and you can see a little bit later here. It was for a magazine. So this is the layout. You said some interesting things while we were chatting about this a little bit earlier about, oh, I'll choose a better image, about how she approached it, the commission, what the series actually is about.
Yeah.
Can you mention it for the people here?
Yeah, it was a commission of Life magazine. And they, at that time, in 1974, they did it like every year, I think. And the series was called One Day in the Life of America. And they chose special photographers to do a special theme. And they choose Evelyn to do a series on portraits. So in this case, a wedding portraits. And they told her the location, which was downtown in New York in the, I don't know the name of the building anymore, but it was one of those locations where you could get married in 10 minutes. So there were people standing in a row just to get this short wedding ceremony. And so what she did, she picked these couples. And it's a series of 12 or 16 couples she did finally. And she always thought everything, background was always the same, very neutral wall. But she always told me she was so astonished how these couples did match so well. And she thought that was struck her the most. I mean, you couldn't change any of these because every couple was a perfect match, she always felt.
Yeah, you can get a sense of the ones that we have on show gallery here. This is another series. There's a lot to get through, so I just want to make sure that we get to as many different aspects of her practice as we can. Let's see. We are in the part of the exhibition that looks at more of New York. I think here we've been looking at people, but maybe actually we can talk a little bit about this and what you're saying in terms of her choice between photographing in black and white and color, and also some insights that you also had, Susanne, about these landscapes becoming almost more abstracted.
Well, I think that the white picture, the colorful picture from Coney Island, really shows her approach to composition, that a picture is not only a picture because something interesting is in it, but that a composition makes a great picture as well. And if you look to that picture, you see that none of those parts of a building could be the thing she photographed. She photographed something totally different. And she photographed the colors, she photographed the light, she photographed typographic and geometrical forms. And this all in the way how she brought it together into her picture makes something very new about it, and very, very, very strong picture, I think. But this is a very good example about her ability to do that. And Evelyn Hofer is also known as one of the early color photographers, but also one of the early street photographers. And you can see that with other pictures in the show, which come from 53, that she really had a sense for design, for street design, for street life in a way.
And I think what is also very obvious in this Coney Island image is that that was part of the New York book. So versus Dublin. So in New York, she was really trying to get very strong, vivid colors, because that was for her the essence of New York. The colors are strong and vivid, whereas in Dublin, she tried to have the muted, subdued colors. Like, I think in Dublin, there's no image where you have really strong colors, whereas in New York, you really have the very vibrant colors.
Do you mind if we go back to this other image, just because it's also so iconic? You said some interesting things earlier about how she works with people, how relaxed and collaborative it is. And also, I thought your response was interesting about how she works and with people of color. Can you say something again?
Yeah, well, I said that, and you, Andreas, agreed that I believe that she always would describe this young man in that picture as a young man with the red t-shirt, with the red shirt. And she was quite relaxed about kind of, you see that also if you think yourself back to the Dublin portraits, you see that she photographed in different social, she photographed different people from different social situations, not only by generation, like the kids and the different age people, but also especially in Dublin, for example, she photographed people from different parts of the society. She was neutral, she was friendly to it. I find it quite interesting that this wasn't obviously a spontaneous photo. The, how do you call it, Andreas? Do you know that, Fahrradständer? The fixing thing for the bicycle to have it standing alone. Can anybody tell me what the name is?
But obviously it's you can see that he's resting there with his bicycle. So he takes his time, he's relaxed, he trusts her. So you feel this connection between the photographer and the person who gets photographed.
Yeah. And again, you have the situation that you have the very specific background. Here you have the situation that the light comes into, except for the red, into a really dark figure. The trousers are dark, the socks, the shoes are dark, his face is dark. So the light is quite specific in a way. And this is kind of, this is another kind of, another example of her portrait art. Her art to make a portrait. Also red and green special colors in a way, no?
Yeah.
And then, I mean, there is a picture in the picture. If you go back to the boy with the red shirt one more time, there's a picture in the picture. I mean, you have the framed little situation of the skyline of New York here, and another situation here. So many things happen in that picture again, which is an interesting aspect of composition as well.
No, it really is.
And I think what applies to most of her color work, so the color photos only work in color. So in black and white, this image and a lot of other images wouldn't have the same strength or impact. So
yeah, that's right. I mean, if this would be black and white, it would be hard to see anything of that person. No?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Wouldn't be a strong image, I think.
Yeah.
Forward now.
So
Sorry. My cursor.
you get lost?
Sorry. This is the last room. So it shows different portraits, and I was curious whether or not you thought these ones would be, well, we talked about it before, whether or not it'd be important to show, just because these are also people who were working in New York at the same time as her. So this one on the left is with Andy Warhol, and the other one on the right is featuring the artist Yayoi Kusama. I was thinking that maybe there was something also here about photographing people in their workspaces, similar to what we were seeing earlier with gravediggers, but also like more in a New York context, and what it was like for her to get these commissions, or if there's anything you can say about it.
Well, I think I only can tell something about the Warhol image, because I think this was a special case because she got introduced through her painter friend Richard Lindner to Andy Warhol. And so at that time, Warhol wasn't a superstar. And so she had an introduction. And so for her, Andy Warhol was an upcoming painter. And she always, she wanted him to stand like in the half dark, because he's nearly disappearing. And so the image is much stronger than the person. And I think she did that on purpose, that she didn't put him in the bright light. But
she did also some very important other things. She noticed, if she really noticed by thinking, but she must have noticed the little light from kind of window on the right side of the picture, and the popping out back frames of wood pieces here on the left side of that picture, which really gives us composition of this. There is a pile of pictures also, but this looks like a podest also, like it frames the situation we think we look at, but we look also into the other things. And though you don't know what she really has done, I mean, this is kind of strange to have this artist, and the artist himself doesn't really show up. Still, he's posing. He's obviously very much posing, much more than all the other people we saw. So that is kind of strange picture, and rätselhaft. I don't know what you.
But I think she felt very comfortable photographing painters, and she got a lot of commissions photographing artists, because it was a world where she felt comfortable with. I mean, she
adored painting, no?
And she herself, at one point in her life, she stopped photography and painted herself. So this whole atmosphere, she felt very familiar, comfortable with it. So, and she could connect very easily to these artists.
The photo of Yayoi Kusama, you said that this was done within the series of photographs for the book New York. But it didn't appear in that book itself. And I like that Luisa chose this photo as an example, because I think this honors the women of that time who did really serious work on their art, in their jobs, but have been so heavily neglected for such a long time. And me as a gallerist, I started to work in the gallery very young, in 1985, And I've met several women artists who lived in the 70s in New York, who really were kind of traumatized by this experience, being so much neglected, having really a hard time to be seen as an artist. So and I think what I think is that Evelyn really must have had a great reputation as a photographer. She had all these great assignments. She did this huge photographic books where she wasn't an illustrator. No, her photographic part was one equal part to the author who would write the text. So she really made her way. She had very early museum exhibitions in early 60s in the Metropolitan, for example. But she never appeared to be a pop star. She really wasn't very well known outside of the world of the magazines, for example, where she had her name. And that she really shared with somebody like Kusama. And I think this is a very, very strong aspect of her personality, that she made her way through a society who wouldn't really appreciate independent women in the 50s and the 60s.
Yes, there's another image in the same room of Lee Krasner's boots. Is that right? That's what example? So
a sad picture.
Yes. So I think there's a lot to be said for what you were saying about these women, or these artists who aren't men, really rising to a certain prominence much later.
Yeah. Andreas, the Lee Krasner, you may correct me, but I understood that the Lee Krasner shoes have been photographed in this studio of Lee Krasner, which used to be, Lee Krasner was the wife of Jackson Pollock, and Pollock died. So after he died, she would paint in that studio. But when she died, everything was taken out. All the layers of hers were extinguished in order to make it again the studio of Jackson Pollock. I mean, that is really kind of weird to me. Yeah.
We're nearing the end. So if you do have any questions, by the way, to those who are in the room with us, do please send them through. So we're moving to the final image, which is her still life. And this is the final series that she worked on before she passed away, right? And before stopping. So this is also in the final room. Is there something that you both want to say about this, about showing it and what it means, I guess, also for London audiences to have met Evelyn and to learn more about her influences and her travels and her work, and what it means, I suppose, what the decision was in terms of ending it a little bit more chronologically in that way?
Well, maybe I start, Andreas, with my personal story with this whole series, and then you explain and give more insight into what it is actually. So when I met Evelyn Hofer in January 2001, I would collect 99 pictures, which I would take with me to have the first Evelyn Hofer solo show in Germany, that would have been opened end of March in 2001, so very soon after. I went through all the photos. I chose those 8 still lifes. This is one of it. And then I went out. We had another meeting the other day, and I came back and looked at them and thought, well, Susanne, you cannot do that. I mean, I work for, which is now my gallery, but that time I worked for a gallery, which actually it was my gallery by that time already. So I worked in a gallery which had the history of non-figurative art. We would have, all the exhibitions of Richard Serra until late mid-90s came from corporations, which with Gallery M, for example. And I was really kind of this the things she would show looked so super classical and historical to me. And at the same time, when I was thinking that this would be kind too conservative, too classical for what my gallery stands up for, I couldn't say no to it. So finally I decided just to take them with me, and that I would have to figure out why I was so interested in them, why I did connect. And the interesting thing now, you can explain that. I understood that by working with them, having them in my show and getting more information about it. So maybe, Andreas, you can tell us now how those photos have been made, which kind of technique, but also how she came to this theme.
Well, it was one of the last series she did, as you said. And because she could realize these images, these still lifes at her studio in New York without having to travel with heavy equipment and so. And still life was always something she was interested in. And what is very obvious, I think, is that she was thinking much about painting. And the first things which went through her mind, I think, were, can I do like things like that which have been done by painters in Spain in the 17th century. And that's why actually she gave this image the name Hommage à Zurbarán. Or the first still life she did, she called it Déjà Vu Still Life. Because she said it had been done 100 times. Can I do something in photography? So then after a while, after she really started the series, then she didn't question the whole thing. But she was very selective. So a lot of these first images went right into the garbage because she felt it didn't work. But then at one point she felt these 8 still lifes, she could live with them. She was very critical. And again, she used that old lens, which I talked about before. And she had the feeling that through this dye transfer process into this lens, she got this special quality.
And this is the point. I mean, she really was a master of light, obviously. She really got all the details. So the basket, the plate, the table, she got that right. She figured out where to get that and what to use. She really had this great, I mean, even on a monitor, on a computer monitor, you really have the feeling you can grasp one of those fruits and eat it right away. And I remember then when we were showing those still lifes first time in the early 2000s at the art fair in Basel, people came into the booth and we had them out at the wall. They came, approached us and said, well, can you tell us something about those paintings? They really couldn't get it, what it is. Nobody had seen or really noticed dye transfer. Dye transfer, really, the color, it's real color, and that dye fronts with the paper. So you really have kind of depth in it. It's not just a chemical surface, it's really in the paper. So I figured out that Evelyn really showed us the state of the arts. State of the arts and technical understanding of her camera, her lenses, state of the arts of printing, but also state of the arts in design, in light, in color, in getting things right. I mean, if you see the original picture, black is not just black. There is something. It's a space. It has structure, for example. It's really a fine piece of art. She realized with those pictures.
Thank you. That's really beautiful. we actually have some questions from the audience, really thinking about, I guess, the state of art. It's from Lucy, and Lucy's asking about Hofer's relationship with literature. So in the exhibition, there is that photograph of James Joyce's Death Mask, and in another case, a book which included the writings of V.S. Pritchett. So can you say anything about her connection to literature and how she connects to it through her work?
Actually, V.S. Pritchett is a good example because she did, I think, 3 books together with V.S. Pritchett. And he later became a close friend of hers. But when working on the books, she did her thing and Pritchett did the text. So they didn't, she didn't illustrate his text. So she did her vision of photography, and Pritchett had his text. So there were 2 people coming together, creating something new. It wasn't like she was just following the text of Pritchett and trying to find the right image. And that was actually with all of her books, which she did with well-known writers. And of course, she was herself, he was reading a lot, and it was a good collaboration with Pritchett because she liked what he did. And
I don't know anything about her relation to literature. I couldn't say anything about it. I know that she had this beautiful library, and this happily still exists, and that she really was a woman of words. I mean, remembering me meeting her first time, and she spoke fluently Spanish, German, of course, her mother language, but also, I guess, Schweizerdeutsch, French, Spanish, I said already, and of course English, and maybe some other languages. But though she spoke fluently, I came to New York. I was able to collect 99 pictures. I was allowed in the studio of Richard Serra to type on an American tastature, so on an American computer, a list of those 99 pictures. So I could come back the next day, still jet lagged, actually, and present this list looked perfect to me. And I ended up with a lot of red notes of corrections she would make. She really was terribly precise with language, totally precise. And she really inherited all this European cultural approaches you could have. This came by wanting to be a pianist, coming from a cultural family, and so on. I mean, and her love for Europe, for the culture of Europe, must have been quite big. Though I couldn't say anything about her specific relation to literature.
No, but that's interesting still. And thinking about how movement informed, I guess, the way the languages, and also, language gives shape to your ideas. That would be very interesting, I think, to note, just in terms of her own experience and moving that she had to do from such a young age. We have another question from Simon. Thank you, Simon. And Simon is asking if you can say a little bit more about the difference between works that she was commissioned to do and things that she wasn't. We touched a little bit on that, I suppose.
Well, actually, all these books she did and she got famous for were all commissions. And then later on, after the books, she worked a lot for magazines, or for like the London Sunday Times magazine, or, as I said, the New York Times magazine. And then I think in the 90s, she got less and less assignments from magazines, And at that time, she decided to do her own projects. And so there are different projects. She did a series on Basque people, or she did a series, a portrait series about the village where she stayed.
People of Solio.
The people of Solio, where she spent
Beautiful series.
part of her youth she spent in Switzerland, about a small village. So yeah, so she was choosing, or the still life, her own. She was giving herself her own assignments when she didn't get the assignments from outside.
Yeah, she had an interesting life, switching from the consignments and assignments of all her projects, where she really, one has to be aware, was able to work very free, you know? So she spent, for example, half a year in the towns, in the cities she would work in, would live in Dublin, for example, and really explore such situations, the lights, the people, and so on. So she had a quite free approach within the assignments. But then out of those photos she would do, all the exhibitions came. I mean, she started to work in the mid of the 70s to work with Whitkin Gallery. That was the time when she would start to choose from the body of work she did those pictures she wanted to see in big, and she could afford to print in dye transfer, for example. So, I mean, she always had this mixture of a frame in a way, but then also this kind of own will she really would stand up for. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience of working with her and working with her work, and for your contribution to the gallery. Thank you everyone for coming this evening, or if you're based in the UK or close to us, evening anyway. I hope you'll check our website for more information on forthcoming program. We have a course on mid-century photography that provides wider context of where the situations that Evelyn would have been working in and some of her contemporaries. And yeah, and if you are in London, I hope you'll visit. Thank you so much, Andreas and Susanne. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I'll be in touch. Bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So.
We have to get out. Bye,
Yeah.
Andreas. Bye-bye.
That's good.
Well,
Cheers.
bye,
Bye,
everyone.
Luisa.
Bye-bye,
Bye.
Luisa. Thank you.